Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Sarsky. I'm one of the consultants with the CART Consortia through the ARPDC, and I'm glad that you're joining me today for the Abacus. You might already have gone to the session on the Rec and Rec, or you're completely familiar with the Rec and Rec and are just wondering how these two connect. So let's dive into it. We'll begin with our land acknowledgement. In the spirit of reconciliation, we are meeting from across Alberta on Treaty 6, 7, and 8 territories, and we honor and acknowledge all of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who have lived, traveled, and gathered on these lands for thousands of years. We acknowledge that these lands are traditional meeting grounds, giving voice to its original peoples and the story of creation in a way that history has forgotten. All right, so welcome to the world of an abacus. So what is an abacus? Kind of looks like the Rec and Rec, if you just did that with me. If you're looking kind of over my shoulder, you can see that I have two Rec and Recs, and then I have a multicolored one, which would be the abacus. So that's kind of the one of the first ways that I can tell them apart. Otherwise, they kind of look very much the same. But what you're looking at on the screen here is these are all pictures of an abacus. And it really does depend on which country you are in and what is being used for, because it used to be a very, it's like they considered almost like the first computer. It was all based on the same premise of how the abacus worked and the binary system that was in there. But this is typically the one you see in the middle. Typically right now, if you were to Google an abacus, you will get more of those pictures come up because these are still being used. Each one of these vertical lines has a different value, and there's just the beads that you would move up and down accordingly for the number value that you're looking for. You do see these occasionally where they'll have multiple colors again on each row, but there's multiple rows of the same. And then it changes, unlike when we were doing the Rec and Rec, remember, because it was just the white and red. Or you typically would see these types where they'd have 10 rows and each row had its 10 beads. So just like the Rec and Rec, but they were a different color. So the longest standing form of an abacus is really just the position of having these horizontal bars with 10 beads on it. What's going to be different about them is that they don't just count one by one like we did in a Rec and Rec. We'll do that. I'll just look at that in a minute on the next slide. But this is one of those fascinating little tools that we have now that's available to us, and some a little more easier to find. Definitely the ones in the middle, very easy to find. To find one nowadays with the 10 rows and the 10 different colors is going to be really difficult. I've linked for you, we won't go into them now, but there were two sites that I found that really had an excellent history of how these were developed over thousands of years and how they were used and how we used to count pebbles of sand and those types of things. So the development of this is quite fascinating. So again, it's something if you want to share with the students, don't have to use it all. They're from two different places. One of them is qmath.com and the other one is Enthusiastic, and they just go enthu.com. Both of them have really good information on it. So then what is the difference? If really there's 10 racks on one and 10 racks on, or 10 bars on the other, then how is it different other than the color? So when we dealt with the Rec and Rec was always a one-to-one correspondence. So if I wanted to count 6, I counted 6 beads. If I wanted to count 6 in the next row, it was 6 beads. Every one of those beads on a Rec and Rec has the same value. Yes, 5 of them might be red and 5 might be white, or different colors. They don't even have to be red and white. But so when I talk about differences, that's the first thing. Is typically on a Rec and Rec, you'll find that you have 5 of one color and 5 of another. We tended to go with red and white, but you could find a Rec and Rec that's in a black and yellow or a blue and red or whatever. It's just that the patterning of having 5 all on the same side that are one color and 5 right behind it that are the same color. The fact that it's a one-to-one correspondence, so every one of those is just 1. So at the end, I could count to 100 because there's 100 beads on there. So I could practice counting to 100. The abacus, on the other hand, could have 10 rows, might have 5 rows like the one you're seeing here, or they might have double 5 rows like the one that's over my shoulder. These are more common to find, and these you could actually still find. You could find one like this in Toys R Us. I did find one in Toys R Us that had 8 different colored rows, not 10. So I'm not really sure why they'd go to 8 to begin with, but they are 8 unique different rows. But the one with the double, so the one I have, for example, has these kinds of a setup on it where it has the 5 rows, and then it has the same repetition sitting on top of it. We'll look at that in detail in just a bit. So the other piece to this is that these are not one-to-one correspondence, but in fact, each row of these is a place value. So the lowest rung on your abacus is the ones. The next one is the tens position. This is the hundreds. This is the thousands. This is the 10,000s, and so on. So if I had gone back to that one here, then you can see that I'm going to get all the way up to a billion. And that was kind of the power of these, is that it gave me the opportunity to go to some rather large numbers. I could ask students to model those numbers. You can kind of see where that's going to go right away. But not only can I model them, but I can also add them. So now if you want me to add, we can do 2-digit numbers with this one very easily. That's not a problem. We can change the rules and go to 3-digit numbers, but we have to change the rules for some of it and keep the rest of it the same. Whereas here we don't, because these are based on place value. So now if I wanted the students to add a 127 to a 564, I have the means to do that. I also can ask some questions about which number in my total is in the tens position. How many tens would there be in the question? How many ones would there be in the question? So those are deeper questions, but those are the questions that I can ask on here because it's based on the place value. These are, like I said, more common to find, and I've labeled mine, so you'll see that in the hands-on piece. But today we actually are going to work on a 10 different colors, layers, but we're going to do it virtually because that's the one place that we can access it. The other thing that's different about the abacus and the Rec and Rec, with the Rec and Rec, we moved everything to the right and they pushed to the left. So they counted out 5, we'd say push 5, so they push 5. The abacus, because it kind of, I think, started before, well before, is the opposite. You will always find the abacus with all the beads on the left-hand side and you push to the right. But does it change anything in the tool of things? No. So in actual fact, I know when I was teaching our son and I used my abacus in the classroom with students, just for consistency, because they're already in a routine with this and they already know what home base is. In other words, it's to the right. We did the same thing. It does not change anything in the scheme of things. So just to be consistent, I will go everything to the right, push to the left so that they hear the same language. But again, you can absolutely choose to do it the other way. So where do you get them? Well, like I said, finding one with the 10 unique rows would be almost like a collector's item these days. So if you have one of those at home, you've got something that you don't want to get rid of. But to find one that has the 5 or the double 5, those are still very likely. I did go through and you can see how our list of places to go for things is really, really slim. Hape Toys Love, Play and Learn, they do have the double set of 5 rows. You can get them on Amazon fairly quickly. But like I said, you can also get them at Toys R Us, and occasionally I have seen them at Walmart, and I can't tell you if it was a double or a single, but I know that they do carry them. But I guess my comment to you would be, if you want to use one that has the full 10 different colors, this would be one of the manipulatives that perhaps we would do them virtually, because then every child will be able to have their own. They can go onto a laptop or a Chromebook, and then they can be pushing numbers and you can be walking around. Or we can do it just as a common screen share, but we have the ability to do it. We just don't have to buy it. And because this might be more limited than the Rec and Rec in its use, and especially initially, you might want to just do it virtually. So here's an example of the one that we're going to use today. You see that you have the different colors. They're a little bit more pronounced when you actually get in there, like they're a darker purple and a lighter purple and darker blue and that kind of thing. But you can see I've labeled them already, ones, tens, hundreds, and it goes all the way up to a billion. And then I also put some questions that we're just going to run through on the side. So this is on slide number 6. You might want to pause the video and print this page out because we won't be able to show it as we are doing the work on the virtual manipulative. So have this sheet or copy of it in front of you, and then you can look down and follow along with me. So I'm going to be calling the numbers out, but it'll be helpful to you to have it in front of you. Or since I'm calling them out and you have paper and pencil, you could just write them down. And if you're doing the virtual with me, which I hope you are, then you can be doing the same things that I am. Okay, so print that slide if you have an opportunity first. Here's where we're going to go to Toy Theater. It has the Abacus. It's one of the few of the virtual manipulatives that has the full set. They also have some information about it, history below it too, so you can scroll down. But you want that template that I just showed you right now, and then you'll have a reference point for it as well. I've also given you just and I call it my reminder. If later you're going back and all you want to do is just, first of all, just work with the numbers, the place value, maybe you want to do some basic addition and subtraction, that's great. And then this one also goes through some of the same processes of addition, subtraction. They'll go into multiplication and division as well. So it's how far you want to go with this. So I just embedded this as well because it gives you a place to go back to. And remember, you can go back to any of these as many times as you want. All right, so we're going to go in here. So I'll give you just a second to bring yours up as well. Unfortunately, we get the ads that go with all of these that are on this. So we can get rid of the ads just by clicking that side. And if you scroll down to the bottom of this, here's some of that history and information I was telling you about and some reminders. Just click on full screen at the bottom. And although we're still going to see what's available, at least we have our Abacus in front of us. And I am going to push everything to the right-hand side, just because, like I said, the students are already used to home being on the right. And since it doesn't change the value of my number, it doesn't change how I do things, it doesn't change how I trade anything, then I'm just going to use it this way. So again, remember, you're starting with ones at the bottom. So ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000, so on. Okay. So when you think about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, if you think about in the ones that you can buy readily today, 5 rows takes you quite far, right? Because you're going to go ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s. And even in our new math curriculum right now, we're not adding to 10,000s too quickly. I mean, we're not getting into those bigger numbers till grades 5, that we're going to do any values with those right off the bat. We have to investigate to 100,000, and we can do that. But we're not doing a lot of addition or subtraction with those bigger numbers. So actually a 5 row right now is quite manageable for us to have if you wanted class sets of them in your school. It would address quite a few of the outcomes that we're looking for. But obviously having the full gamut is always better. Okay, so on our sheet, I'm just going to call them out if you're writing them down. Our first one was, can you show 6? Okay, we're starting small and just want to make sure that they remember. So they don't have the benefit of the 5 and the 5, but we're hoping that they can subitize even if they skip count by 2s. So down here is the 1, so I'm going to push 6. All right, so when I got my 6, everybody's got that, great. Always back to home base again. The next number was 25. So remember, here's my 10s. So 10, 20, I'm going to push 2 of those, and I need to push 5. So I have 25. Okay, back to home base. So you get the idea. Kids like these, and they love the fact that the 10 colors does make it a whole lot easier to work with, I have to say. All right, our next one is show 124. And remember, we don't say 124 because the and is the decimal. So 124. So this is my hundreds row. So I'm going to go 124. Okay, and you could ask them a question like, you know, what number is in the tens position? Well, I have 2 beads in the tens position. It's a 2. You could even ask them how many hundreds in the question. Well, there's only a 1. How many tens in the question? More difficult question, and you wouldn't do that right off the bat, and you'd want to make sure they're very clear on place value. because this, remember, one of these has 10 of these in it. 10 tens to get 100. So there's 10 here plus these two gives me 12. It's not just about position, it's also about value. If I said how many ones in here, and if you've watched anything on money yet, then you'll see how we do that with the place value discussion there. How many ones in here? It's not 4. 4 is, we have 4 in the ones position. But how many ones? How many, if I asked you to pay me in loonies, how many loonies would you have to pay me? You would have to give me 124 loonies. That's how many ones in the number. So there's the power of seeing this in terms of the place value conversation. Okay, we may not do all of them, but let's keep going through our number list anyway. The next one is 2,461. 2,461. So tens, sorry, ones, tens, hundreds, thousands up here. So 2,000, full 2, 400s, 60, and 1. And again, you can have that conversation now. How many, what numbers in the hundreds position? 4. How many hundreds in the question? There are 4. Or are there more? Right? Again, remember, each one of these has 10 hundreds. So there's 10, 20, and 4. There's 24 hundreds in 2461. So again, those conversations are rich conversations for kids to have, but they can see the different colors that they have to. I need a whole row of these to make one of these. I need a whole row of these to make one of these, right? It's that power of 10 as we're going up. Okay, the next one. We're into 14,636. 14,636. So this is my thousands, this is my 10,000. So 14,000 means I need a 10,000. I need 4 1,000s. I need 6, oops, 6, there we go. 136 was our number. Okay, I think you're getting the idea. All right, let's try some of the addition ones. So when we have the abacus like this, then we are adding numbers together as we go. And there's value for sure of them writing them down symbolically, because if we want them eventually to show us an algorithmic way of thinking, or they're doing it by expanded form, whatever they're doing, I want to see an expanded form, by the way, works really well here, because then you can line up the expanded form right beside the line that you're doing. But our first question says, first of all, show me 154. So 150 and 4. And to that, I want to add 231. So 231. So if I have 154 on the side, 231 underneath, I should be able to verify what my answer is here simply by counting 1, 2, 3 hundreds. I have 3, 6, 8, so 385. So again, I can add. You do recognize, of course, that we're going to have some questions where we're going to run out of beads. And of course, we want them to be able to make some trades for that if they need to. Okay, let's try another one. Let's try 427. So 420 and 7. And to that, I want to add 362. So 360 and 2. And usually when it gets down to something, some of the kids will say, what happens when we run out of beads? Say, well, let's have a look at that. We're going to maybe have that situation come up. So again, they can count up their answers and then verify it if you want to do it by algorithm. If they're not even doing the algorithm yet, which is fine, we would rather that they just read it off first, right? And then they can even compare with a shoulder partner. Is this the same thing that you got? What's the answer that you wrote down? Did you write down the right number? The other thing about just calling it out is that you're asking them to write a number down that you're calling out, and you're just double checking to see whether they know their place value and how to write numbers, because that's not always an easy piece for students either. Okay, let's do the next one. 528. So 500s, 20, and 8. Okay, now the next one I'm going to add to that is 246. 246, almost said and there. 240. Now what? I can add 2, but I need 6, so I need 4 more. So what I'm going to do is I added the 2. I'm going to send these all back home again, all 10 of them, and trade them for one of these. And that will give me the rest that I can now grab for and get my 4. So we used the 2 that we had left over to fill the bar. Whatever I was short, I went back and I converted these 10 in for one of those to get these back again. And then I pulled over whatever else I needed. So you're converting. It's the same thing like base 10 blocks, only the kids are doing it now just by counting of I need to regroup so that I can get back enough beads to pull. This, for some students who didn't get it with the base 10 blocks or they don't understand regrouping, this starts to make more sense to them because it's very visual. Okay, let's try one more. Let's do 1,000. I'll put mine back to home here, sorry. Okay, so 1,000 up here. The number is 1,274. So 1,274. And when kids are grabbing quickly, especially 7s, I would ask them, how did you know that? And just want to hear them say maybe something like, I know that 7 is 3 away from 10. So I didn't have to count to 7, I just went backwards. Okay, that's the kind of thinking we're hoping that they've gotten from Rec and Recs as well. All right, so that was 1,274. What I'd like you to add to that is 357. So 350. I have 3, but I still need 2 more. So I'm going to send that one back, trade up for this. I had 3, and I need to pull over 4 more. So it's 357. And then the last, oh, sorry, I missed my mistake there. It was 50 that I was looking for. Pull over 3 over. And then the last one is I need 7. So do I have 7? Nope, I only have 6. So I'm going to grab the 6. I still need 1. So I'm going to send them back and trade and get my 1 back again. So all they're doing is trading. If they run short, they send it back home again, but they have to keep track of what they've already traded. And then they can add in a new one above, right? You're trading for 10 of these for one of those, whatever line you're on, it's always trading up 1, and then you can move them over. So all kinds of different numbers. You could even just call out, and this is a really good experience for students, call out numbers in the 100,000s, 126,450, right? And then once they start getting into those 100,000 numbers, also give them numbers where they have some deliberate zeros in between. Like what if I asked you to show me 1,050, right? The students have to be able to internalize, what does that mean? I'm going to have something that didn't move. 1,050. So here's my thousands, 1,050. So this didn't move and this didn't move. So how do I internalize that? Where do those zeros, those place value holders come in? There is a session that we did earlier this year on place value with one of the doctors from Australia. And in that work that we did with her, we also had the option to give our students a place value test. And I'm not talking about like a MIPI for all of the different topics within math. It's specific to place value. And it was very enlightening for everyone to come and give that to their students and find out sort of the strengths and weaknesses specifically about place value. And one of them is where you have words written out of a number and they have to write it, where there's deliberately a zero embedded as a placeholder. And the struggles that they had. So it was very interesting. And so they need practice at that. They need to have that math talk afterwards, like, why didn't we move that row of beads? Why didn't we move that row of beads, right? That kind of conversation. Okay, so that gives you an idea of how the abacus works. And that's really important for us to let students have this. This is a fun one for them to play with. They do like the colors, and they do find it quite easy to navigate, especially when we're getting out of just the columns that we typically do with place value. Okay. So in the hands-on, I'm going to just reiterate what we did very shortly, though I'm not going through all the questions, but I'm going to use the abacus that I have at home here. And this one's, it has the double rows on it. So again, what it does is it allows me to build the number at the bottom that I want to add and the number at the top that I want to add. So if I gave you two numbers like we were calling out, I can put one number at the bottom, one at the top. And then we typically use the bottom, rearrange the bottom, move whatever we need to, just like we did before. We move whatever we have to get the answer at the bottom. And the kids can move both hands. They kind of like moving their left hand and right hand at the same time. So pop in for that one as well. And that would be one that you would be able to buy if you wanted to. And maybe you just have one in the school that you use as a model, but doesn't have to be that everybody has one. Thanks very much, everyone. I hope that helps get the abacus behind you. And don't hesitate to reach out to anyone in your own consortia that's in your area, or if you need some help, you've got my email at the bottom there. I'd be glad to give you a hand if you have any questions.